My name is Joe Peroni, and this is the Rise Above Project. And today I want to talk about being honest about our environment and being honest about what we need from our environment. So let me kill the suspense and just say it right up front, that then I'm going to kind of prove it as we go along. So this is what we actually need from our environment. We need love, we need social connection, and we need validation. Those are the top three. Human beings, we're all born with the same two fears, and only two. Number one, the fear of falling, and the fear of loud noises. Every other fear and insecurity that a human being has is absolutely 100% learned from our environment. So we can say that we are all products of our environment. Now, if you had a good, loving, supportive environment, you could say that you are a beneficiary of that environment. But if you had an environment that was not loving or validating, you could say that you were a victim of your environment. No one is born with the need to do drugs, with the need to hurt people. Nobody is born with the need to be greedy, to be prejudiced, to have hatred of themselves, hatred of others. You're not born being a bigot. You're not born with feelings of helplessness. You're not born with low self-esteem. You're not born with mistrust in other people. You're not born with this idea that you have to withdraw from people to feel safe. These are all learned from being in an inconsistent, invalidating, non-loving, non-supportive environment. And if we want to look at this deeper, and I'm not going to get into it too much today, I'll give you some ideas on it. If I learn how to do this, I can link it in the description. But what I'm talking about here is maybe you could do some research on Harlow's monkeys. And the conclusion there you'll find is that emotional connection is actually more important than food. And in another experiment called the still face experiments, you'll learn there that the lack of interaction with the caregiver will create attachment injuries and helplessness and hopelessness in the child. So those are too big to talk about today, but you can research that on your own. And again, I'm going to try to link it in the description so you can see what I'm talking about more. All of the problems that come from attachment injuries and lack of emotional connection are amplified in environments that prioritize money over people and encourage excessive individualism and narcissism. So again, it's not just the family environment, but it's the overall culture that can cause issues. So all the negative outcomes I've mentioned so far basically break down to two categories. Number one, it's an attempt to regain self-worth and superiority by having an unhealthy attachment to other groups. Because if you don't have it in your family, you will look for it in other places. And this is where we get situations where we have people wanting to join, let's say, gangs. And number two, it's an attempt to regain control by acting like they don't care at all and not having any boundaries. And here we have people that basically take a victim stance and a helplessness stance. Like, I don't care if I go to school, I don't care if I have friends, I don't care if I'm good at anything. Again, that's just a coping type of mechanism because they don't have enough self-esteem to actually go out there and try and then find out that they may fail. They don't have that in them because of lack of attachment when they were younger. So a lot of this sounds really negative. So what's the solution to this? I'll give you a few solutions from a few different types of areas. And one area that I like to look at, if you can believe this, is art or music. And I think Freud said this a long time ago, that everywhere he goes and he tries to be really smart and intelligent and insightful, there's been an artist that's been there before him. So even he admitted that artists somehow have this connection to human beings that psychologists and therapists just don't seem to have. So let's start off with something that I think is just about right of a solution. I think Lennon and McCartney had this a long time ago, and they wrote a lot of different songs, but it really comes down to all you need is love. As simple as that is the solution, and I think they even wrote that in one song too. Love is the answer. And I really believe that. So if you can believe it, a couple of days ago, I went to the Golden Nugget, and I saw a concert there of a band from the 70s. They're called Sweet. I don't know if you know them or not, but they've got a song called Ballroom Blitz. That's probably the most popular one, but I'm not talking about that. They have a song, it's called Love is Like Oxygen. And I think that's about as truthful as it gets as well. Because, again, that's exactly what we're talking about here. Somewhere along the line, it became weak to tell people that you need to be needed, that you needed to be loved. You know, we have this over thing about being individualistic, self-sufficient. Being self-sufficient is fine, nothing wrong with that. But the thought that you just don't need anybody else and you don't care, all you need you and your materials and your money, I think we've lost our way. So I think musicians have really figured that out, that we have lost our way. Let's talk about some more stuff here. I think we have to get to a point where we can love ourselves first, and then we can interact productively with other people and with the world. We have to understand that loneliness is a killer. Study after study tells us this. We need to let people know this. We need to stop telling ourselves that being alone and being overly self-sufficient is some type of superpower. It's not. It's usually a coping skill because we were not loved enough a long time ago and we don't trust people. So let's look at some real science now, just in case somebody's out there going, oh my God, he's talking too much about artists and music. That's not a good argument. Okay, let me buy into that a little bit. So let's use probably one of the best studies ever done. It was at Harvard. It's an 80-year longitudinal study. And let me just cut to the chase. We'll give you the conclusion. The conclusion is that healthy relationships are more important than fame and fortune. Healthy relationships are also a better predictor of physical health than even cholesterol levels. Sit back and think about that for a second. They even say that if you really love or care about somebody and they hold your hand, pain goes away. And again, going back to music, the Beatles, I Want to Hold Your Hand. They didn't realize that they were talking about physiologically as well, right? That we have certain feelings that go through our body because of that. It actually lowers our blood pressure and makes us feel good. It helps us release oxytocin and dopamine. So all these other things about love and connection, things that people somewhere along the line have forgotten to talk about. Let's talk about this from an existential point of view. And I'm an existentialist, so I'm going to say that I have a fair amount of expertise here. There's about 8 billion people on the face of this planet. And as human beings, we're here for a very, very short, minute period of time. What makes one person special from another? You know, what gives us meaning and purpose in life? I mean, we're just a bunch of people, right? Is there meaning in life? You know, that's the big question. What makes any one person more important than another? You know, if you're listening to this, what makes you important? What makes you feel important? I mean, we're here 1 minute and we're gone the next. You know, what makes it all worthwhile? From an existentialist point of view, what we really want in our life is another person or other people to be a witness to our life, to be able to share experiences and to be able to look at those so they can actually say, I saw your life, you're important. It's important to be able to serve other human beings, to make a difference. Basically what we're talking about here is to be able to be validated by other human beings. And we can also validate other human beings. All very important. Another thing about existentialism, probably the number one thing that an existentialist would look at in order for a person to live a happy or a meaningful, fulfilled life, would be, do you have meaning and purpose? And if you don't have meaning and purpose, you need to look for it or somehow create it. And what do we mean by that? What gives a person purpose? Typically, it's how you connect with the world. So let's say it in a different way. We could say, do you have meaning and purpose? Or why would you have meaning and purpose? And the other way to say that would be is, we all have a need to be needed. And there's nothing wrong with that. So let's put that out on the table. Again, let's be honest about our environment and what we need from it. And that's it. We need love, validation, social connection, and we have the need to be needed. It's okay to say these things. So if that wasn't enough, I want to read a little bit here from a psychologist that's done extensive research on this. I'm going to read this a little bit because I don't want to get any of it wrong, and I like every single word, so I want to make sure I have it right. So it says, existing research by psychologist Tim Kasser can help address this issue. Kasser is the author of the High Price of Materialism book. And he has shown that the pursuit of materialistic values like money, possessions, social status, the fruits of career successes, leads to lower well-being and more distress in individuals. We can change that word distress. If we want to be more clinical, we could say it adds more to your anxiety and it adds more to your depression. It is also damaging to relationships. My colleagues and I have found, Kasser writes, that when people believe materialistic values are important or more important, they have poorer interpersonal relationships, contribute less to the community. Such people are also more likely to objectify other people, and they use them as a means to achieve their own goals. So what we're looking at here is an increase in antisocial personality disorder and an increase in narcissism. Some of these things I touched on at the beginning of the show. So if the pursuit of career success comes at the expense of social bonds and connections, then an individual's well-being will suffer. That's because community is strongly connected to well-being. I could do this all day long with a ton of studies because there's really no studies saying it the other way. So they indicate highly of what I'm telling you is that what we need from our environment is way different than what people are trying to sell you. Here's something interesting. Look up some studies about the 1970s compared to now. In general, not always, of course, but in general, people in the 1970s were happier than the people today. Now, somebody might come up with a bunch of different reasons, but let me tell you this right off the bat. In the 1970s, the crime rate was insanely high compared to what it is now. So don't have this thought that, oh, things are better now. No, it would be false to think that because things are better now in terms of crime, that, and actually, you could say too, we're a lot more accepting of people, right? Because in the 1970s, it took until 1973 that we didn't consider homosexuality it used to be considered to be a mental disorder. So we actually were very judgmental through the 70s. There was a lot of race issues. There was all that in the 70s. Things are way better now in a lot of different ways. But people were happier in the 70s. Why? Social connection. That's why. I remember the 70s. If somebody needed an extra slice of bread because they were making sandwiches for their children, you could go knock on your neighbor's door. They wouldn't go, oh, first of all, Nowadays, knock on your neighbor's door, they probably won't answer. That's number one. But back then, not only would they answer, but they would give you a loaf of bread. They wouldn't judge you like, oh my God, what's the matter? You don't have any money? So you had friends. I used to walk home from school in the 70s, and I would be able to see different people going, oh, looks like you're running a little late. What's going on? Your mom's waiting for you. Like the whole community cared about you. We knew this. And again, they were just so connected to people. I remember as a kid, I think I was trying to get attention. I don't know. My parents were divorced. I was like 6 years old, and I was over at my aunt's house one night, and I faked this thing that I got sick. And I was trying to tell them I had this, something went down the wrong way, and I was like, oh, I'm choking. The funny thing is that I was really looking for attention when I was looking back at this. Because I was over my aunt's house. Not only did my aunt and uncle lay me down on the couch, but they went next door to get somebody. I would say within 5 minutes, there was about 10 people minimal in that living room, looking over me, seeing if I was okay, because we were a community. And at some point, somebody gave me like a little ginger ale, trying to wash it down. And looking back on it, they were probably they knew that I was not faking it, but they knew that it wasn't a major issue. They just thought it was a kid complaining because his parents weren't around, and he was just trying to make some excuse. I was trying to get them to call my mother at work to come and pick me up, But who did pick me up? The whole community. That's the answer. The whole community. My aunt was there. My uncles were there. My cousins were there. They had people across the street. They had somebody who owned a candy store like a block away that came over and gave me candy. Like, you feel so loved. It's an amazing thing. Like, we don't have this anymore. So again, why were people happier in the 70s? Even though today there's less crime and there's a lot more available. It's the lack of communication between human beings today. It's where people are on their phones all the time. There's no social connections anymore, or very little. We've lost that, and in a sense, we've lost our happiness. So I don't want this video to get too long. I know I put some personal stuff in there, but then again, I never wanted this channel to be a Wikipedia page. I think anybody could do that, so I'm not here for that. So let me give you the conclusion. It's my personal and professional opinion that trying to transcend the need for love should not be in vogue like it is today. Why? Because it's inhuman. That's why. And number two, you cannot reach your full potential as a human being until you can give love and accept love without guilt. So I hope you found today's show to be valuable. And hopefully you can subscribe if you like the content, and just as good or even better, you can refer this to a friend so I can build up my channel a little bit more. Thank you very much. I will talk to you next time.